the modern immersive surround processor. It is a beast of a machine to be able to design and build. Some are absolute standouts while others just deliver all right sound for the money. I'm going to chat to the next guest about what it takes to actually build something truly special and sort of the experience and the skills involved to actually make that happen. Check it out. It's going to be some amazing stuff coming right up. So guys, while recording this, we were live from the other side of the world of each other. The internet connection was a little bit tricky and the audio a little bit trying from time to time, but the message is still super clear. So do enjoy, despite I know the sound not being as good as it could be. The Rogue from Reality podcast series. I'm Scott Rogan, founder and head designer of Rogue Home Cinema. On this channel, we're all about high performance, professional cinema for your very own home. And we know with cinema at home on any day, reality can go completely rogue, which is hence the name of the show. And I'm really stoked to be joined for our very first podcast series by a man who lives and breathes audio, quite literally, because I am looking at the saxophones in the background here. So he breathes audio, has been in it for a long time, and have, for some crazy reason, taken on what would be home cinema's, I think, hardest category, which is the immersive sound processor. And that man is Rick Santiago of Indy Audio Labs. Welcome.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
This podcast, we're going to chat about what it really takes to build an immersive sound processor, or not just build one, but build one that sounds fantastic. And you guys are perfect to chat to about this because you embarked on this basically from scratch. And I can testify with the result with the Muse processor here in my own demo room, which cleans up the competition sitting just below or around that price tag and really is a heavy hitter for some of the big money stuff. So before we get into the main topic, it would be great for everyone to hear a little bit of history on how you first got into audio. And then we'll talk about this crazy idea of building a sound processor after that.
Sure, yeah. I'm one of these guys that had the audio itch back in high school, grade school time frame. I remember the first time that I went over to my uncle's house back in the late 70s, and I heard quadraphonic, and he worked for Philips, North American Philips at the time, and he had one of the early quad receivers. And
wow.
he played the motorcycle going around the room, and it just blew my mind. And then he played, some vinyl on these quad speakers through this Philips receiver, and it was just, the bass was like nothing I'd ever. And
Wow.
It was immersive. Actually, my first intro to immersive audio was in the 70s, I can say.
Wow, there's not many people with access to kit like that.
Right. Yeah. So he was probably a very first influence, and I kind of got the interest back then. Pursued it a little bit in high school. I started building loudspeakers and studying up, and I wanted to go into engineering. Designing loudspeakers, but then I got a job at an audio store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from originally, and it was a high-end store, one of the more successful stores in the area, Flanders Audio Video, and I was working in the service department, and I started working on electronics and speakers and things like that, and I kind of got more interested in the electronic side because there was this magic. There was stuff that was happening and you couldn't see it. And so that was kind of magical. So I ended up pursuing electronics in college, and for the purpose of being able to design audio.
Wow.
I did an internship.
Purpose from the very start. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And meanwhile, I was, a young musician playing saxophone in band, things like that, and trying to navigate my way through this thing that I discovered called jazz, which became a passion besides electronics.
Nice.
But anyway, so I graduated, went to work at Shure in the pro audio business, where I had worked on a lot of different electronic digital signal processors. So I ended up getting a master's in DSP.
Oh wow! So yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that's interesting. So digital straight up, not rather than analog. Well,
Yeah, I did a little bit of both because I was doing my master's while I was working at Shure. So I was working on electronic hardware designs for communications and microphone preamps and a little bit of power amps back then in the sort of early 90s. And then, but I switched over to DSP in the context of they did teleconferencing systems with echo cancellation. I remember going to some of the NASA conference rooms and doing installations of teleconferencing systems,
gosh.
things like
I
that.
feel even worse that my studio setup didn't work properly today.
Oh, that's
given you like had the ultimate conference systems, but we've got here. We're doing pretty
I've
good.
seen
for
all
the other
levels
side
of
the
system. Yeah, all levels of system fail. It doesn't matter how sophisticated. But so that was back in the early days. But I did get to play around with acoustics at Shure. Received a couple, granted a couple patents in acoustics, some microphone areas, things like that, and got to be involved in some of their earphone projects that kind of kicked off that industry, as well as some microphones and DSP processors, like I mentioned. So it kind of got a broad variety of great experiences there. It's a great company up in Chicago. Moved on in early mid 2000, like 2006. Moved on to Klipsch down in Indianapolis, which is why I ended up moving my family down here. And was the VP of engineering for a while there. And that's where I met Indy Audio Labs co-founder Ted Moore. And Ted is comes at it from a little bit of a different background, not necessarily a musical background, but a physics background and semiconductor instrumentation. And so Ted and I hit it off pretty well. And the sort of fast forwarding, we left Klipsch in 2008 and started a company called Indy Audio Labs, and that's why we're here today. And that's why probably, as you said, we're crazy enough to dive into one of the most complicated categories in audio these days, immersive processing.
Indeed, that it's really interesting sharing your journey, because that's certainly the right sort of experience list to be able to, you kind of need all of that to take on that challenge. And it's, the acoustics, because of course room EQs are things, so understanding acoustics as well as DSP, as well as just good quality audiophile componentry. It's all there. So no wonder you guys went, hey, let's take this thing on. So what was it that actually triggered you guys to go, hey, we can do a good job of this, and go down the surround sound option?
The rep. Well, we looked around at the market at the time, and it seemed like there was a gap. There was sort of this group of products that were in the audiophile range, and there were a few well-known designers and personalities in that industry that did a fantastic job with analog design and squeezing out the last 0.000 whatever % of harmonic distortion out of their amplifiers and preamps and things. And but yet the time frame was, if you keep in mind, it was in the the mid 2000s. The other thing that was happening at the time, though, was the home automation craze was really getting started, and as was streaming. And so there was this convergence of this emphasis on home automation and what that would do to the entire market, to basically have audio become an endpoint on the home network, one of the devices, if you will, on the Internet of Things, is the audio endpoint, the renderer, so to speak. And so we said, well, why can't someone combine the high performance audio, the great designs that have been time tested for 20, 30 years and really optimized. Why can't somebody combine that with, web connectivity and the ability to, remote control and monitor and utilize some of the new tools available with networking and processing to make a more modern version of a high performance audio lineup. And so that was kind of the premise that we went with and went after, and we saw a gap and a niche. And so the first product that we introduced was a 2-channel Class AB amp, the A2002 from Acurus. We introduced that after a few years of being in the cave, redesigning a few things and developing some network interfaces. But that was a 2-channel amp that had a network Ethernet controlled interface and could be controlled on a modern network. And that was 2011 time frame when that came out.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we just kept going with that theme.
Because Sonos was only starting to get a bit of a grip back then. So,
right.
And that was, I guess, what's become, the networked audio sort of pioneer in many respects. But you guys were right there alongside with the same sort of, I guess, vision in many respects. So that's cool.
Right. Yeah, really bringing performance audio was sort of our differentiation, like,
performance
the bigger
audio
rooms.
Differentiation. So technology and concept similar, but
right. And there were a lot of naysayers
cool.
back then too. I mean, there were a lot of folks that said, you're taking an optimized, Class AB amplifier and you're putting all this digital junk, which is going to create noise and distortion and all that kind of stuff. So no, that's part of the challenge is to know how to isolate the circuitry properly, and so forth.
Right. Okay, so that's one of the big critical parts is having, as you say, tried and true audio performance. I guess that whole analog sort of world of audio,
right?
And decouple that away from any of this potential digital noise. So that must be one of the secret components of what you guys have done. Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the hardest things on the hardware design aspect of these things as well.
Okay.
A lot of folks struggle with that. So.
And I know the boards inside the units are completely custom to your exact specification, made in USA. So that obviously was the only way to get that result, I guess.
Yeah, that gave us the control that we needed, allowed us to do some things that were different. I mean, especially when you fast forward to 2016, when we introduced our first immersive processor, that was a combination of analog technologies and digital technologies and user interface and conversion and a whole bunch of things. And at the time, most of our competitors in the high performance realm had simply given up and gone to one or two companies over in Asia and basically said, give me a custom version of your platform. And so we decided to, again, leverage our strengths. We had, at that point, 2016, built up a pretty solid line of amplification of our design, both in the Acurus brand and the flagship Aragon brand, with refresh designs.
Yeah, so just briefly on the Aragon, which is probably a name that's going to be picking up a few people's ears at the moment. How were you guys involved with that one in the past? Were you guys involved in the earlier designs, or that's something that you've picked up on as you took over some of the businesses and aimed to improve it?
Good question. It's more the latter, actually. So when Ted and I were at Klipsch, Klipsch had purchased Aragon from Mondial Designs. That was back in roughly 2000, 2001 time frame. The Mondial Designs platforms were sort of badged with the Aragon brand under Klipsch's leadership, and they kind of simplified the lineup. Everything became, Aragon designs and so forth. Some of the same designers from Mondial were involved. Mike Kuziak, notably, was really the main engineer from years and years,
Mm.
uh, even days following Dan D'Agostino's original consulting on preamp amp designs in the first generation of it. But then the designs at Klipsch kind of went on a holding pattern back in 2002, 3, that time frame. The market changed quite a bit. There was an opportunity to go into big box and other things that were larger opportunities for Klipsch at the time. And so that was just basically the stopping point for them, but that's where we picked it up. So we basically took it over and advanced it.
Certainly a brand that deserves the attention
right.
and the respect, because that's legendary. And I think I saw a review, a comment on an old Stereophile post of an Aragon, and the guy's like, "Oh, we put these up against MBLs, and it's just sweet, and yet it's 25 years old, and it's awesome." So, and MBL's like crazy money stuff. So this is cool gear to play around with for you guys.
And it's still a great value. I mean, given the performance spec, we've remained true to the design, because the design has been, as you said, 25, 30 years out in the field, such a reliability record, and still, winning shootouts in audiophile groups and things like that. So, there's amps that I keep hearing about, we keep supporting, that are being used in Nashville and studios to this day, that are being used by speaker companies as sort of a reference amplifier as to what their speaker can sound like in the best case.
Wow,
very
cool.
neutral amps.
I know we're here talking about the immersive sound processes, but we will touch on the Aragon just a little bit more. So is there any what's your roadmap for those that series of product line?
Yeah, when we were in sort of our first phase of launching a bunch of amplifiers earlier on, several years ago, Aragon was our flagship, and it was sort of the way of saying, hey, we're not only back, but we're as good or better than ever.
Wow.
We took the monoblock and we upped its performance spec from even the original classic monoblock and things like that. But since then, it's been a focus on Acurus since we released the first Acurus Act4 processor in 2016 up until now. So for the last 4 years or so, we've been focusing on Acurus pretty heavily. I think what you're going to see roadmap-wise is we've got some new designs on the Aragon side in the realm of preamp that we've been mulling over for years. They've churned in engineering, and they've changed faces and designs and napkin sketches for years, but we've never executed them. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't, because what we're coming up with, and we're pretty far along in development right now, is a pretty exciting 2-channel preamp that goes with our Aragon line. It's got some high performance analog capabilities. It also is enhanced with some digital capabilities.
Awesome.
That's going to make it capable of doing multi-way loudspeakers. It's also going to make it capable of doing compensation, things like that. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of particularly as you go pushing, higher end, high performance and loudspeaker, it's certainly, biamp, triamped, losing the crossover, letting this new digital world take over that job. I was in the Wisdom factory earlier this year, and almost all their gear is, to get the planar magnetic driver nice and low, they got to cut that hard. So they need DSP for that to really squeeze the performance. And yet it's mostly Cinemery stuff that does that, or big DSP in and out things, but to have that analog heritage with the DSP all in there, there's probably not a lot out there that does that, right? So
no, there isn't.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's cool. That's very cool.
No, we're really excited about that.
Yeah, look, even like I've been really getting into the music in here with the Muse. It's it's really captivated me. It surprised me actually. And even this morning, I had one of our reps come by and we're chatting, and I played I've got some wisdom speakers here as well, which is so revealing, particularly in the top end.
Yeah.
Clarity is phenomenal, and you're just like, wow. And we forget that we're listening through a home cinema product. How dare we, yet, it's an audiophile bit of kit. It's beautiful. So, it'd be amazing to see what you guys can do with obviously even more, I guess, space in the box and simplicity and more of a 2-channel, I guess, platform. The codecs and all these things you don't have to worry about. So it could be push the envelope further, I guess.
Right. And the Aragon as an amp platform is just, cool. It's got the ability to drive very difficult loads, tons of output current. You can build a giant power supply, old school power supply with the big transformers, big capacitance, things like that. And rugged, they built on a platform and a technology that's been running successfully in the field for 25, 30 years. We use some of the same power supply components that were used 25 years ago, same exact suppliers from North America. Cool. Because
a lot of people say they weren't built like they used to, so
they are a lot of ways.
There we go.
Yeah, but
that's awesome. So that's got a few people totally G'd up. Any idea on release dates or target dates or something like that?
I suck at release dates. Everybody knows that. That's the thing. No, I mean, I would say later this year, and we'll leave it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll hopefully, if I get to the US later in the year for some of the shows, we might be able to check it out. That'd be amazing.
Yep, absolutely. And you brought up musicality, Scott. That is, I think, kind of a silver bullet, if you will, for cinema. Because there's this unnecessary distinction between a home cinema audio chain and a music audio chain. I've never understood it, kind of coming in from the pro audio perspective. I spent 17 years in pro, coming back into residential, so to speak, after I did a residential stint while I was in college. I kind of got confused about that. To me, it's sort of like, the analogy would be in pro audio microphones, which I was immersed in for, many years at Shure. You use the right tools for the job. So, there's Omni mics, there's super cardioids, there's, boundary mics, there's things like that. They all have a purpose and they all work phenomenally in the right application. And that sort of reminds me of, some artificial distinctions that there are in home cinema versus, residential audio, electronics, or speakers, things like that. Speakers fundamentally are going to be rightly placed in a room based on the match to the room, match to the listening taste. And fundamentally, as far as the material going through them, they should perform equally well with cinema material as well as music. And if you think about home cinema and the role that music plays in home cinema, rendering music accurately in cinema is arguably, half the battle of having an effective presentation of a movie. At least half the battle.
Absolutely. And as you say, it's the right tool for the job. We are in acoustically small rooms, home theaters, and hence the joy actually of bass management that cinema processors have, which the 2-channel world actually does not. So there's an advantage there. And then like you say, that the role that music has in a movie. I watched, I think, Atomic Blonde the other day, and that was kind of half the movie was people moving from one location to the other with some cool music playing, and it's like the movie was almost more about the music than the video. And so that's really neat. But of course, it's always there to set mood and emotion around a scene, drama impact. But then these just music in a cinema playback room, which I've been doing here. And I say just music, it's like purely music, though now I believe that promise, and something like Floyd Toole would talk about, is how multi-channel music has the advantages that two-channel does not. Yet I think it's people who, and I'm going to sit on this point for a little bit, it's a lot of people have heard poorly implemented surround sound and have gone, well, it sounds crap for music. It's like, well, yeah, it's poorly implemented. When you get the right speakers and acoustics and seating position and bass management and subwoofers and all this stuff right, for the room, for the space, for the listener, the acoustics of the space. And then now, I guess people that have had Trinovs and data sats for a while, like, yeah, we already get this bit because they've had a high performance processor. But usually for that, say American dollars, $5,000-ish, I guess, for a processor and under, it sort of wasn't really audiophile, right? So that was missing. So with the Muse, it has that quality to it, which when combined, I've been playing the Dolby surround with the center spread on, which is alarmingly maybe going away from some systems, which is a problem because it works. Center spread on, music in here with 9 channels plus 2 subs plus 4 overheads in here, and I'm like, man, 2 speakers can't do this. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. So it's like, at last, this whole multi-channel music thing's better than stereo. It's like, that's happening now, and it's happening now for a much lower budget. So it's but everything's aligned in this room. We've got everything aligned, and the results are massive. So it delivers. So
and I think especially nowadays, as we're not able to attend live concerts and things like that, having the ability to play a live concert in an immersive system is an experience that's the only way you can get these days.
Well, you gotta have a good seat in a good venue, and the guys in the mixing desk, they have to be on point to have a good experience. The amount of I remember at the one of the big festivals I visit often when I was in my 20s, and everyone thinks I'm still in my 20s. I've got more experience than you think, right?
Late 20s, right?
Almost 40, man. So,
but I remember those days.
Oh yeah, it was that live sweaty spaces where you'd rock out, and the culture of live music was very alive. And we're watching many bands on the main stage all day. Right. And then I think it was Rammstein, the crazy German rockers, right? And they came on, and it sounded twice as loud, like more dynamic and more impact, and just everything was different. And it's like, well, this is obviously the same environment, the same speakers, the same amps that were running all day. What the hell's different? It's like, well, the dude in the mixer and the band were on point, and it was mind-blowingly good. So even in the live scene, everything's got to stack up to have that really amazing experience.
Absolutely. And then when you do a recording, I mean, they have time to dial that in. The thing about live that you got to give them credit for is, they get one shot at it and they don't dial it in post. It just happens either well or it doesn't. So you give them a lot of credit when it happens great, at the time. But some live shows on Blu-ray and HD, they're just amazing, mind-blowing. And makes that you can get in your cinema.
The Hans Zimmer live in Prague. Have you've given that one a good play?
I've heard some cuts from it. I haven't heard the whole thing yet, but absolutely,
I think
recordings
it's
like that.
I think it's the Jack Sparrow. It's obviously the Pirates of Caribbean track, and the girl starts on the cello, and it just these more and more layers
Yeah,
keep coming into it, and it
yeah,
starts getting so loud, and it's where you need a great processor with lots of amps and lots of
right,
speakers and a great cinema to really just it
right,
keeps. And you think, and I'm like, holy shit, that's so loud now. And then more of the band kick in. You're like, oh, this is crazy. And it's so cleverly made. I mean, Zim is just,
yeah,
such a talent. And you
yeah,
think there's nothing else left. And then
yeah,
the choir kick in and they're, whoa, and you're like, how's there room for that? And it goes
right,
another level. And then it
right,
just quiet and back to the cello. And it's like,
right.
whoa,
And
it's amazing.
that's the trick, isn't it? The quiet, the dynamic range. Having a really low noise floor. That is a thing that you would insist on in an audiophile system. But I hear a lot of theater systems where there's this sort of they're maybe using pro amps, pro power amps from which are great for what they do. But in case of a small room where you should have 40, 50 noise floor at the most, maybe below
Yeah,
that,
40, 45 is pretty common now.
yeah, yeah. You've got this noise floor that's just popping up everywhere because they're not using the right signal chain. So all these things contribute, and these are things that have been traditionally audiophile, rules and requirements, but they're really now applied into the home cinema
Yeah, I mean, a great
space.
cinema is a quiet cinema,
Right,
acoustically and sound isolated, and projectors
right,
a bit noisy, so we try and sort them out in a hush box, and then of course the
right.
audio path. And
Noise floor.
what was amazing for me is with the Muse, um, it's just so damn clean and has so much up its sleeve that I'm running the Theory speakers in here at the moment with their amps and with bridge some
Sure.
and I'll take that system all the way up until the Theory amps go no, and they've got some protection in them. And we're running, even with just the two subs, we got about 113 dB in here. And as I say, the Zimmer track's crazy, and it's like, yeah, it's just interesting. We can the sound is crystal and beautiful. Evan Mum was in here and she didn't ask me to turn it down, right? Like that's always the test.
It
If the
is, yeah.
spouse or family are like,
Right.
if it's not a nice system, they ask you to turn it down, but it's not. It's beautiful. But then I push it to the 11 where something in the system goes time out, but it's not the processor. It's like so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, and it just allows us to test and review different stuff in here and really know what's going on as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's the challenge.
how did you get it to do that? Now we went.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. When we designed these processors, we came at it from the perspectives of what is the scope of the amps or the active speakers that we're going to be plugged into. We have to basically then target our gain structure to accommodate, sort of the extreme popular cases, let's just say, not the, extreme, case that nobody uses. But then again, you have to allow for simplicity in setup and operation. So, one approach that some companies take in engineering is you basically leave all the levers in and let the installer figure out how to set up the gain structure properly so that it's matched and optimized for the different situations as far as amp gain or room size, things like that. So we had to distill a lot of these requirements down because a mantra for us is simple operation, simple installation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we probably didn't hit it out of the gate in our first gen processor in the initial software, but that's the beauty of a software based system. You update, you iterate, And so we
Indeed.
knew out of the gate that updating was going to be critical.
Yeah.
And so over time, as long as the hardware fundamentally was sound, with the conversion, which it was, and remains sound, with the second generation platform, it allowed us to really dial that in as we figured out, okay, we're generally paired with these amplifiers and these speakers, and this is the gains that people are, feeding back that are more typical. And maybe we ought to adjust our gain structure a little bit. I remember a couple points in time, I said, you know what, we could probably get a lower noise floor by making a gain structure adjustment and doing that in a firmware update. And that's how we continually improve these products,
Wow.
not only for our current customers, but previous customers.
Gotcha. So the software can manage and control the actual analog preamp stages, I guess, of the device. Oh wow, I wasn't aware that was something. Okay, so I guess I mean it's an upstream digital volume control, effectively, I guess, in various parts. Excuse my simplicity of the audio engineering going on here.
No, that's right. I mean, you've got the ability to do volume adjustments in different places in the digital system, whether it be in the DSP or in the actual D-to-A conversion stages, or in the volume control stages. You say, in our case, it's a digitally controlled analog volume control, which is a nice manifestation where you don't have the old analog volume control, hot, noisy issues that you used to have. But on the flip side, you don't have the zipper noise and the other problems with some of the digital volume control adjustments that you hear on some other products.
Sure. So that sounds like a little bit more of the secret sauce we just learned there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of secret sauce in there, but I'm not going to reveal enough details to let anybody reverse engineer.
Yeah. Wow. So these I mean, obviously there's a lot of consideration and as you say, the ability to tweak components to ensure that because you often only have control of one part, so compatibility is important. And I've run a few Muses now with some some Anthem power amps, some ATIs, and the theory systems, and so a bit of a mix of stuff, and several different subwoofers, and all of it's just super solid. So it seems to be, I ain't sure how different those things are from each other from electronics point of view, but for me, it performed very, very similar, and we got a massive result in each install. Yeah.
And generally speaking, the other thing I should mention is that, we don't do this in a vacuum when it comes to setting up these performance parameters. That's the whole point of having a product that's Dolby certified, ATS certified. Those organizations also have been at this in a big way in terms of setting up standard levels for outputs, standard requirements for decoding, things like that, and making sure that your product adheres to those requirements, using your judgment as a system engineer as to how to interpret those requirements for the best manifestation of it for our customers. That's where our creativity comes in. But the engineers at Dolby and DTS, shout out to those guys. They've also done a great job setting those parameters, no doubt.
Okay. Yeah.
For this equipment.
And the 16 plus channels on the platforms you guys have worked with, that's it's an awesome channel count. I added my wide channels in only maybe a month ago, and they're definitely firing up a little bit more than I thought. It was difficult to know which discs would actually utilize those channels, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that even actually the Apple TV, some Netflix documentaries. I think it's Drive to Survive, the F1 season.
Oh yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, which is responsible So it looked, yeah, great 4K,
Yeah.
Dolby Atmos.
Right.
That show's responsible for me ordering my new satellite system because I'm hooked. I'm in for the new season. It's
Yeah.
live, and of course, to get real 4K, I need the sat box. It won't stream, so I'm like, that's fine. Let's get the dish.
Right.
So, but yeah, and that doco series, those wides, they were lighting up. They were.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was cool. I'm like, wow, this means even more level and more impact and more immersion. It's
Yeah.
it's a
Just
scene
in
I
the
go out of my
past
way
year.
to demo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In the past year, I would say streaming immersive formats has gotten a lot better. There was a lot of quirkiness last year, popular devices with Atmos and um, you know the way devices would handle stream disruptions, pauses, plays, things like that
Yes.
was quirky and it created weird behavior in coders and things. But it's gotten so much better just in the last few months. I was listening to the Roku Ultra recently and watching
Sorry,
some
what
of the
was that
Star
one?
Wars stuff.
The audio's breaking up a little bit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so ironically, I was listening to the Roku Ultra recently,
Oh yes.
and it's rendering Atmos, with watching Disney Plus, some of the Star Wars stuff. Did a great job
Cool.
on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, my Apple TV for a while there wouldn't play Atmos at all. Just no sound, so I had to scale it back. So I was very upset. And then with the later update, it's been solid. So
All
Apple
right.
was like, used to never go there. Then I'm like, these things are quite cool. And then they had some major hiccups with that
Yeah.
firmware.
Yeah.
And now it's looking good. So
Yeah. Agreed.
and yeah, the content. I heard there was it's a little bit of a different discussion, but I heard there's certainly a lot more of a not so much a push, but I guess a push from Dolby and the technology producers to have the studios utilize the technology in a bigger way as well. So that's a really cool thing, seeing that coming about.
Yeah, I think it's using the technology more often. Releases, using immersive formats right out of the gate. And then also the big push that I'm excited about is the immersive formats for music. And Dolby during this COVID time period has done a lot of webinars related to producing Atmos music, and I think that's designed at the engineering production community. But I think that's going to result in a lot more content music-wise for consumers.
Yeah. It's interesting that right now on Tidal, the only way to get it is through like a Samsung smartphone or something. And I'm like, how do I get the Atmos out of that
Right.
into my cinema?
Right.
And the Rune Nucleus streams with HDMI, and I thought, oh, maybe we can get Atmos from that. And they haven't. I'm like, can you guys actually run that sort of codec on that box? And they haven't sort of said anything. I'm like, okay, maybe a new model might need to come out for them to have that sort of advanced decoding.
Or firmware update or something. Right.
Yeah, hopefully it's grunty enough to load in. But as we know,
Right.
some platforms need hardware as well. So
Right.
that'd be interesting. So I'm super keen to get some. Have you played Dolby Atmos music through your systems over there, or is it still a difficult way of extracting it in? How are you playing it?
We've had limited experience because there's limited content, but we've been able to do some streaming from computers and things like that, sound cards, and it's been very cool. It's been what you expect, comparable to experience that you get on Blu-ray.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm just looking forward to more content.
Yeah, awesome. And so the chatting back to say the immersive processes, the Muse. Now I've done a few reviews on that, which people would have seen, and obviously a big fan. The sound quality is just straight up there, and you've given a bit away there about the fact that the the boards are all custom. You've got the digital away
Right.
from it.
Right.
So there's some talented work with the audio um, componentry there. Now, of course, an immersive processor is effectively lots and lots of DACs as well, which really
Right.
means that. And I know Lynn, we're really big at talking about how the source is the most important thing, and then it's the control stage, and then it's the playback side, which is power and speakers, which are at the mercy of what happens upstream.
Right.
The thing with a cinema processor or immersive processor is it's kind of two parts in one. It's kind of a source now in the way that it's a DAC, and because in the hi-fi world, a DAC's considered a source anyway, and
Right.
then it's also the pre-section as well. So was there, what was the, is there any particular DACs or things you had to work on there? I know a lot of us don't talk about what Sabre model 225 DACs in each thing, but is there anything to share there about what you guys discovered around, linking up this control, the codec decoder to the DAC side? I guess these are the kind of the nuts and bolts of the immersive processor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think you work it backwards. The way to think about it is to say, okay, if I want the most dynamic range in the room, meaning ability to create high SPL as well as at the same time a low noise floor, in the room when things aren't happening or it's very quiet signal sources going on. You work through the problem backwards in the signal chain, and that means that obviously amplifiers have to be designed to support that kind of dynamic range. But then you get into the preamp, and the preamp stage has to be able to drive not only our brand of amplifiers, but other brands of amplifiers or active speakers. And so you're going to be looking at having voltage rails inside the unit that are adequate to create a large signal swing. We want to be able to put out many volts of swing, even though this is nominally minus 10 type equipment.
So it's
nominal
headroom where it counts.
Yeah,
right?
we got to put out many volts despite that, and then be able to go down into the microvolts of noise floor. And so, some things you're not going to do is you're not going to have a lot of different complex gain stages at the back end, because those are going to be noise sources that are going to just stack up and cascade. So you got to make that signal path as short as possible, keep the noise and distortion down. And then coming out of those DACs, you're going to have to set the correct level coming out of the DAC so that its headroom is optimized, so that you can do gain adjustments in the DSP. Because anytime you do things in the digital domain to increase gain, there is a fixed limit. It's not like you can add more voltage like you can in analog. There's this limit called, all bits are at 1. And once you hit that, there's nowhere else to go. So you've got to be smart about, I've got to allow for gain adjustments and trim adjustments and EQ boosts and things like that. A lot of products get this wrong, actually. A lot of products have, hints of clipping as you start doing EQ, overdoing EQ, let's just say, or have issues with accumulation of noise floor. In the opposite case, where you're trying to trim down your signal match to a given amplifier by doing all digital domain, that can create problems as well in terms of noise floor. So, so when we design this whole chain, those are some of the things that we think about, and then looking at the DSP core itself. I'll just say our DSP core is based on a TI chip, TI DSPs, and we've been TI DSPs now since our first immersive processor. Those are, you got to have at its core, you got to do some floating point arithmetic, and then you've got to, as you convert that down, prepare it to go out digital to analog conversion, you've got to be very careful with precision and your math, so that you don't introduce digital noise floor artifacts or quantization errors.
Right. So it's
Years
the
ago,
implementation of each part,
right,
and
yeah,
being cautious of its limitations,
right.
and yeah, makes
I
sense.
remember being burned on this as a young engineer back in my Shure days in the 90s.
Yep.
We were doing a feedback reducer for pro audio sound systems, and the algorithm had to automatically put in notch filters when it detected, feedback frequencies. And for some reason, whenever we got free feedback at, 100 hertz or less, the filters just were not effective. The system would just continue to ring out of control, and we're just scratching our heads as DSP engineers. What's going on? And then we learned about noise shaping filters back then. That's a DSP thing that is just one of many, many, gotchas that you've got to get right in order to, do audio in the DSP domain and do it well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the beauty is, as you create and discover and learn for yourself, that knowledge is so valuable in being able to think about how to implement all these other new decoders
Right.
and DACs and out, versus just sort of taking what other people have done and bolting a few parts together.
Right.
These little wonder that some products are quite special, while others maybe are lacking there, and it's you got to do the hard yards to find the magic.
Right. You pay your
20
dues.
years in this game as well, and we're just starting to, we've really just got these rooms humming, and I think it's a great time for cinema, because home cinema, of course, particularly because we've got the technology that's not holding us back. Like, it doesn't matter,
Right.
even if I got everything right, like I believe I do today, 10 years ago, and we put a VHS in, it's like, come on, this probably doesn't really matter that much. But
Right.
today, there's more to gain, and therefore there's more to lose than ever before. So
right. Yeah, there's the systems today are revealing, but less forgiving.
Yes.
The recordings that you used to love, back in the 80s, you still love the musical, creative aspects of it, but there's some of them that I just don't love the production quality anymore.
Yeah, I was spending a bit of time online looking at various sources of favorite musics for dynamic range, for mid-range, and different genres, and kind of rebuilt a bit of a title list, because I realized that in this space, music's so powerful, and I want people to be able to choose their music, but they got to choose out of the list that I've got, because at least I know inside of that range of music, it's going to be nice, because you can get a crack recording. Like, friends around the other night, they're like, "Oh, play this," and we turned it up, and it was just kind of noisy.
Are we done yet?
That wasn't much fun.
Yeah.
Didn't really do justice. So again, I guess that just it's interesting as we chat about all sorts of things. How just every link in the chain is so important to have that true magic. And the technology we have on particularly Ultra Blu-ray and Blu-ray disc, and now Atmos music, there's less limitations. So definitely worth the effort. I think as well, what I'm seeing is we're having some folks that are maybe more in the custom market than the enthusiast market, where they don't really understand the watts and the outputs and the DSPs and stuff, or even the channels. But they want a beautiful result. They want an amazing experience in their home for them and their family, and they work hard all week, and they want that space. And oh, I forget where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? That's right. Sorry. There we are. Their expectation now of what cinema can be, they haven't maybe experienced what home cinema is today, but they
Yeah.
know with all this technology around, it just must be friggin' good, right?
Right.
It must
Right.
be
Right.
good. And it's like, absolutely, it's good. And we've seen people who wouldn't spend tens of thousands of dollars on amplifiers for hi-fi, but
Yeah.
they're spending multiple tens of thousands of dollars on all this amazing equipment
Yeah.
integrated and customized into a room that's given what I like to call, a big ROI, a massive return
Yeah.
on investment for
Yeah.
them and their families. So it's so cool to be involved in an industry that can really deliver something special. And
Yeah.
we're not trying anymore to be like the cinema. We're cleaning that thing up. The commercial
Right.
cinemas are cleaned up. Yeah.
Right. Right. Agreed with that. I think you touched on a point though that it's probably interesting in our industry and the CDO channel especially, and that is there are a lot of folks that come at it from a different perspective. I mean, we've been talking about music and audio, and obviously that's a passion for both of us. But there are folks that come at it from an IT perspective quite often, and they're bringing they've got the tools to bring great cinema projects to customers along with other aspects of IT, control,
It's the whole
automation,
smart home
lighting,
thing. Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um, the things that we as an audio segment of this industry need to maybe educate and get better at, frankly, from a standards perspective, are the things that they stumble with most often. The interoperability aspects of, I'm going to put this source device with this HDMI, switch with this network conversion device, and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to put it all together. And it should just work because it's, this one's this HDMI standard, so is this, and it should just play and talk together.
Should, right? Yeah.
Our segment of the industry has not been as smooth for folks that are not expecting those issues. Like, if my advice to someone who's from an IT background getting into cinema, deploying these types of systems is, make sure you have a test cinema in your office and put together the system and test it as a combination before you deploy it at your client's install for the first time.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm so excited to have the new space we've built here, which is in my own home, and it's the office, it's the test pad, it's the review pad, it's my demo space. And it allows me to be immersed as well in what I'm all about. And these last few months is I'm kind of getting high on my own supply sort of thing, which so you got to know what it does, right? And
right. Drink your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that's the one. So and it's been magical to be able to just even the way that I set the lighting in here, little touches like that, which means when we're out on a project, we can implement that rather than experiment out there. And even some previous clients who have popped out to service or upgrade, and we're able to, I've got a few new tricks, we'll put that in there. So, but it takes time, when you're implementing a delivery on a project, and you think it just all plugs in and works. Well, maybe not. And a lot of the guys aren't spending the time engineering speaker location and acoustics. So, I mean, they're just miles away from delivering something first class, because it takes time, and you got to invest the time to start in the design. You got to manage that the install's done per design, and then the integration, the configuration and the calibration of the project. You got to be confident with that as well. So I always look at, creating a cinema room is a little bit like building a race car, and you guys would know this. You guys it's your heart and soul in Indy and Adams as well, right? You got so many moving parts, and is this thing going to be on the podium, or are you going to be stuck in the pits? You're at the back of the field. Like, it's easy to spend the money and end up in all of those places.
Right. If you go to the garage in Sydney, 3 days before the race, and you put the parts together for the first time, don't expect to be on the podium.
Well,
You know,
actually, that reminds us of the Formula One
right,
documentary. That what was it? The Williams team were rocked up late for practice, and
right,
yeah,
right,
man, look where they're at. It was not impressive. So
right. It's tough. Yeah, that's the same applies in our industry, and I think it's a great metaphor. Actually, I'm a big F1 fan, and I often think about the analogies between, building a performance car and building a performance piece of audio equipment.
mm,
There's metrology where the system needs to know how the pieces are performing so that it can optimize itself. There's the overall result, the speed, the quickness, the braking, all those kind of things, and all that takes engineering and attention to detail. Um,
yeah,
and it takes planning to deploy. It's sort of equivalent to. It's nice that you've got a great combination of speakers and electronics and sources, but what do you know about the room? So it's the
mm,
same thing. You've got a great car, but is it optimized for the particular track you're going to run this weekend?
yeah, yeah.
Is it about flat out speed or is it about corner handling? What kind of track are you guys? Are you at Spa or at Coda or where are you at?
Yeah, that's what I say actually is the room environment
Yeah,
is like the race track.
right, exactly,
And the other electronics and components is, like the vehicle. And
right,
I say to people that, I'd prefer to go to drive a go-kart on the local racetrack flat out
yeah,
than drive a Ferrari to the shops and back.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like where's the thrill in that? So it's like you get
right,
the room right,
yeah,
then hey, let's take the Ferrari to the racetrack and let's
right,
have some fun with that thing, right? Like
right,
that's where it's fun. And we see some audio products, particularly some of the two-channel world, which are kind of more like trophies. They're very beautiful.
right,
And
right,
when they're in the concrete living room, it's
right,
like, oh man,
yeah,
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 it's trouble. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
dangerous. So yeah, and that's where my love for two channel kind of deviated into cinema because Blu-ray happened and our picture didn't suck anymore. So that was a
right,
good thing and got me
right,
excited. But also we could control the experience because we could control the room.
yep,
Difference.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I'm looking at the time, Rick. So, how are we
Yeah,
rolling at the moment? We have some, a lot of fun talking about a lot of
yeah.
different elements.
Hopefully you can piece this together to an interesting.
Yeah, well,
Is there any other topics that we wanted to cover specifically that you had? You know, I'm okay
I
for
guess,
a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, well, I guess, one of the things I haven't experienced yet with your own product in the Muse is the EQ system, other than the manual
Oh yeah.
PEQ, which
Sure.
I have utilized. I've got all
Yeah.
the mics and the measurements and stuff, and
Sure.
certainly it always helps. Um, and that's a manual, and it's funny because now when I do go manual, I'm like, oh, I kind of do like those auto things a little bit more. They're kind of handy. Um,
Yeah.
it's even more exciting for me knowing that you've got the your own house brand EQ system right around the corner, knowing
Yeah.
just how much you've experienced in microphone and acoustics in your
Yeah.
past. I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys must be cooking up something pretty nice here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and Dirac's probably a real big bolt-on EQ system. A lot of the big brands are using and seem to be working really well. So
Sure.
there's again another massive move to not
Yeah.
simply bolt on, I guess, Dirac. So
Yeah.
what was it because you guys thought, hang on, we can do something even better, or what's the idea around that?
Well, I think if you look at again the way we approached it way back in the early days, the idea was uh, one of our core principles was simplicity, and getting to the result with the least amount of headache, but getting to a good result.
Mhm.
And we felt as we tested other systems that um, there were really comprehensive systems out there, but the simplicity was lacking, or the integration with our system. So, for example, if you played with our web control, you know that we bring out the same icons and the same controls that are used on the front panel to a device, and
It's
so it makes
actually
it simple.
yeah, I must say the interface is so sweet. It's easy to read. It looks cool. It's
Yeah,
really neat.
yeah.
I was meaning to ask who actually helped like design that, because I think it's sort of quite a genius
Yeah,
actually.
that I would say give a lot of credit to our engineering, because we did it all in house.
Wow.
Joe Land and Ted Moore, they did the bulk of the lifting on that base design. So,
Because it's a
yeah,
little bit more kind of like Apple simple, and these are
yeah,
real art to getting something
yeah,
that's sweet. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
works on another whole
yeah,
dimension of psychology the way that interface is.
yeah,
So yeah, well
yeah.
done for that. I must agree. Yeah.
Well, and I think Ted's. This is, I mentioned Ted, my co-founder. His perspective coming from outside of our industry, it made him a great candidate to
Yes.
work on UI designs, because he's not polluted by what everyone else has done.
Yeah, good. I was going to say there must be some outside perspective here.
Right,
Otherwise, it's
right,
you look through the same lens. Otherwise, when
right,
you use
exactly.
the
Yeah.
same
So
game.
that's a benefit that we have. But so anyway, applying that same thought to root correction, um, what we wanted is, we didn't want sort of an external box with external firmware. That's a whole different, thought process that you operate in its own way to then do something to our product and then go away.
Right. Okay.
We
So you
wanted
lost some control over this digital
right,
world.
right,
Gotcha.
and the other thing is that, keeping in mind that a huge percentage of these products are going to be installed by integrators, and of the world of CEDIA integrators, there are varying levels of. There's guys that are certified on room calibration, acoustics, and some well-known names that go around, and that's all they do. But they don't do all the cinemas that get deployed. We wanted to have a system that could be deployed by somebody who doesn't have a PhD in acoustics, who doesn't even necessarily have a lot of background in tuning rooms, because there's some basic instructions that we can give to someone, and then the intelligence and the other stuff that needs to go on to do the calibration and the learning about the room, we can automate that. And so that was kind of our approach to it. Yeah, so very similar to what we talked about earlier about gain structure, and not giving all the controls over to the user, and kind of wiping our hands as engineers. That's the same approach that we're taking with our aspect room calibration system. We're taking those levers and knobs. We're gonna make intelligent choices for the 80% of what happens in most cinemas, and then 20% things that we need you to tell us about the environment. We're going to make that real simple and use our UI language and all that kind of stuff to present it. So
that's really good, because they say a lot of the integrators spend 98% of their time connecting things and 1 or 2% experiencing the result, and then they're off to the next one. So they're never often really very dialed in to the experience. I'm quite different, where I spend a disproportionate amount of my time experiencing the products. So I've got a feedback loop to be able to understand what to expect and how to calibrate, and therefore how to design better. But that's not so often. There's a lot of beautiful homes out there, and the cable guys and the smart home guys are going to win the cinema and win the living area. So they're already talking to the client, and it's important for those guys to be able to still execute on a result. And early auto EQ systems would miss things. You know, phase could be out and the guys would leave site and the audio EQ system didn't work that out, or it got it wrong. And far out, man, when you're doing 11, 15 or so channels of sound, you can't have anything out of phase anytime. But it's what a waste. So that's just some of the basics, you know. It just to get the basics right, systems would be 50% better, let alone to get that right and then have that nice EQ on top of it.
That's right.
That's going to really deliver.
Yeah. No, we're excited about it. We're delivering a system. We believe that because of that philosophy, it's going to allow people to do things faster and be more confident, and it's just going to make all of our systems perform better and better light for the customers by and large, because the integrator is enabled to do a better job.
Yeah, and as you say, it's you're not having a third party play around in your digital domain effectively is probably one of the main reasons why you go that way. Yeah. And I guess that might have had to have been installed somewhere in that pathway you were saying before, which might not have really been where you wanted that to apply and what gain it was applying and all that sort of funny stuff.
That's right. The thing that we have to address is we've had end users that have, wanted to purchase their own calibration system. We kind of intended it for the integrators, but as you know, there's end users that are in the process of this constant evolution of their cinema and they keep adding things. So I get it. So, who knows? Maybe it'll be an end consumer version of Aspect one of these years. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. So guys, we're actually cut off there towards the end of our conversation, which is a real shame. We're going to get into a few other things, but really happy with the stuff we covered today. I really like the way that Rick explained how they worked from the back, the end result they were chasing, and work their way back when it come to audio design. Some really awesome insights there as to not just what's happening inside the audio processor, but how that fits in with the whole part of the chain with gaining that true cinematic experience at home. So remember, guys, to stay all across everything real high performance cinema at home, remember to subscribe and check out our website for more inspirations and services. Remember, with a fantastic, dedicated cinema at home on any day, reality can go rogue.